So how do we know each other, Richard?
So I joined Liquid CRM almost 6.5 years ago now. And yeah, it's been a blast. Yeah.
And I remember the time you were doing a swim down a river.
Yeah, I think that's when we first met actually. I was preparing for a river swim down the length of the Breda River. 315 kilometer swim from the source of the river down to the actual mouth. And it was just one hell of an adventure. Awesome. We swam about 12-15 kilometers a day, 6 days a week. Okay, I mean in the background here you can probably see it. There's Robben Island in the background. So it's about 7.5 k's. Yeah.
How long does that take you?
Depends on the conditions. If there are currents, mist, that kind of thing. But on a good day, you can do under 2 hours, basically. Wow. It's an awesome swim, and once again, it's a mental thing. It's overcoming that sort of fear of open water, hostile marine life, and also just self-belief. Basically, there's so many people that overcome it, that are just ordinary people and set it as a challenge and actually do it. I compete competitively. I train about 6 times a week. I do sort of anywhere between sort of 3.5 to 5 kilometers in a session. I do early mornings because I get it out of the way first thing so I can focus on work.
Yeah.
Some people think I swim all day, but I don't. I get up at 4:45 in the morning, 4 times a week, and I do an hour-and-a-half session.
Yeah, I know you do a lot of work too, so you do get it all in.
So yeah, when we came back to South Africa, I joined a company. We engaged 2 large radiological practices, and embarked on this journey with them to replace the existing patient management. We got involved in this industry basically, and I fell in love with it. The journey for these 2 practices was to actually go digital. The tech that they put in basically was unbelievable. It allowed then the radiographer basically to take digital images, which were put up on screens basically, where the radiologist now, instead of looking at a piece of film, is actually looking at a 3D image, which you can then rotate. And our job was basically to take the clinical data coming out of these systems and convert that into an invoice. So the solution was developed because medical practices face a number of challenges. Those challenges revolve around their cash flow, the accuracy of the data that's being captured regarding the sort of clinical details of a client, the actual procedures performed and the materials used. And then generally sort of just managing the referring doctor relationship basically, which is very important to a practice, especially larger practices, where your referring doctor base is actually your source of revenue.
Right.
In terms of the services you provide to the sort of surrounding communities. The patient record is key because that brings together a whole lot of information regarding the patient, revolving around first of all whether they're local or foreign. Okay. It's important to know that because often foreigners who come to the country on holiday have an accident, come in for an x-ray for instance, and have to pay normally in foreign currency, and you have to bill them and know that they're not local. Otherwise they disappear, and how do you bill them after that? So that's one of the areas. And then for local, it's important to know the medical aid details up front, so that you can actually put a medical claim through and actually collect the revenue as quickly as possible. And then obviously the obvious sort of other sort of relationships that a patient has, you're the main member and who the dependents are on that actual medical aid. The patient's diagnostic history, the procedures they've come in for, the number of visits they've had, as well as retaining their patient history. So that's very important. So from a patient point of view, that's sort of main kind of focus is the 360-degree view of the patient. The other part of it is also the billing part of it, basically, in terms of revenue collection. So revenue collection is actually very important because often what happens is patient might have exhausted their sort of funds for a certain type of procedure, and then it becomes a cash collection problem. And a big focus on sort of from a practice point of view now is what they call patient outreach, which is adding value to a patient's relationship with the practice in terms of newsletters, useful tips on how to stay healthy, it's virtually sort of preventative type sort of actions that a patient can take to prevent them from having to come into your practice, which hopefully will add value to their lives, and then eventually if they do get sick they will come back. Okay, the other important element of CRM is actually on the doctor. Okay. The referring doctor, as I said before, they ensure your constant stream of patients coming in, especially larger practices as well, where you've got a multi-branch scenario, and in each of those branches basically you have referring doctors around each of the branches. And you need to make sure that if there's a new doctor who's coming to the area, basically that you get him on board to start referring patients to your practice. So a lot of the larger practices actually employ a marketing person to actually go out. They know when there's a new doctor in the area. As in the patient, on the referring doctor, you can get like a 360-degree view of the referring doctor and your relationship with that doctor. So it's just, their practice details, whether they have partners, and then obviously the important part about the relationship is the revenue by month and the revenue you're generating out of that referring doctor's practice. And you need to look after your sort of top 10 doctors, basically make sure that they're actually sort of looked after, and because they're sending a constant stream of patients. The other thing that you can do with CRM in terms of that relationship as well is, if you're a multi-branch practice, and you, for instance, radiology is a really good example, you have invested heavily in like a CT scan in a branch. You need to make sure that those referring doctors in that area actually know that you're offering that service now from the CT scan point of view, and that they don't have to send their patients elsewhere. Being able to isolate the doctors associated with that branch and then sending out like a notification to them. So yes, that's actually sort of a critical part of the practice's cash flow nowadays, is to actually make sure that the accuracy of the claim being submitted to the medical aid via medical switch or gateway is accurate enough to prevent a rejection from happening. And machine learning can sit on top of that and actually analyze the claim going out beforehand, and then notify the actual medical receptionist that basically there's something wrong with this invoice, you can't submit it, you have to correct these areas.
So cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool that. So what can be done now in terms of the patient checking in for a particular type of procedure at front desk, and the medical receptionist can then take their sort of medical aid details and actually validate for the procedure whether they still have funds available for that procedure. So you prevent all the pain that the patient has to go through fighting with medical aids post-fact, basically, to actually sort out the payment of that procedure, which is quite cool as well.
And a much better patient experience.
A much better patient experience. Other nice things to have as well are sort of, when you go to a practice, you normally have to complete details that can be tablet-based now. There are things like patient portals. So normally what happens in rural communities is you'll have probably one of the siblings who's working and pays for all the medical expenses for his extended family. They have a mobile app basically which allows you to make bookings on their behalf for doctors and visits basically. All the native functionality in CRM can be used for that basically in terms of the scheduling of appointments, which is very cool. And then also for case history, on the day, you can use a case to track the actual case against the patient. So basically all practices are bound to submit ICD-10 codes with a procedure performed, whether it's just a GP visit or a specialist visit. And I don't think many patients know about this, but basically what happens is that data gets collated and submitted to provincial and national level here in South Africa, and then onto World Health Organization. And what they do is they use the data to identify, believe it or not, things like disease outbreak, health risks in populations, basically in terms of like sort of obesity, related to like heart disease, that kind of thing as well. Believe it or not, all that data is collated on a sort of a global basis. I've always had a problem with weight. Lost the weight basically sort of during matric, went to varsity, discovered triathlon, became a lean fighting machine, 82 kilograms, and then normal cycle of life happened. Got married, the whole thing, had kids, bought a house, work pressures, worried about finances, all that kind of thing, and we went overseas for 6 years as well, which didn't help, and I ballooned to 130 kilograms, and then we came back. to South Africa in 2006. And of course South Africa is very conducive to exercise. I got into running, injured my Achilles, and in desperation came back to swimming. And swimming was I always loved swimming, even when I did triathlon. And I just persisted with it, and eventually just the weight dropped off. And I continued with it, and my swimming improved. And yeah, now I do a lot of open water swimming. Into the healthcare industry and working with those people and seeing sort of people going through issues with their health.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And realizing that there's a bigger problem in society, basically. So if you can build a system that helps not only the practice from a sort of a revenue point of view, but also then can also sort of reach out to your patient base, and you know, things like newsletters, etc., which give them tips on their health. It's more preventative. I'm very passionate about that kind of thing as well. I'm all or nothing kind of person, so I sort of pretty much cut out all carbs and sugars. I don't do that anymore. I eat clean. I eat meals prepped from scratch, basically. I don't do TV dinners or junk food anymore. And yeah, it's just changed my life. You know, that with the exercise as well, basically. Yeah, it made a huge difference in my life, and I can recommend it to anybody.
Gotta get to the other side.